Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we are talking about one of the coolest and most powerful ideas in all of technology, neural networks. We're going to get right into it and break down how, exactly, we're teaching machines to think, to learn, and even to see the world around us. So, let's just kick things off with a big question. What if a computer could do more than just follow a set of instructions? What if it could actually learn from experience, spot really complex patterns, and make smart decisions all on its own? Kind of like our brains do every single second. Well, it turns out the blueprint for building these truly intelligent machines wasn't dreamed up in some futuristic computer lab. Nope, the inspiration was right here, inside our own skulls, the whole time. The human brain, with its billions of interconnected neurons, became the ultimate model for artificial intelligence. So here's our game plan. We'll start with that biological inspiration. Then we're going to zoom way in to look at a single artificial neuron. After that, we'll see how millions of them team up to build a network, uncover the secret sauce of how they learn from their mistakes, and finally, we'll see where these digital brains are already in action all around us. All right, first up, a brain for machines. The whole idea here is that nature already built the most incredible learning machine we've ever seen. So for computer scientists, the challenge was kind of like trying to reverse engineer it. Now, to really get how the whole network functions, we have to start with the smallest part, its basic building block, the neuron. Let's look at the original biological version side by side with its digital twin. Okay, so inside our brains, we have these biological neurons. You can think of them as these tiny little decision makers. They get signals from other neurons through their dendrites, the main cell body adds it all up, and if that combined signal is strong enough, bam, it fires its own signal down the axon to connect with others. It's a really simple yes or no decision, but it's repeated billions and billions of times. The artificial neuron is basically a math equation that copies that process. It takes in a bunch of inputs, pieces of data, and each one gets a weight, which is just a number that says how important that piece of info is. Then, the neuron adds up all those weighted inputs and pushes the total through something called an activation function. That function is what makes the final call. Does the neuron fire or not? And what signal does it pass along? And this table just lays it all out so perfectly. The dendrites receiving signals, that's just like the weighted inputs in the artificial version. The cell body doing the processing, well, that's the job of the hidden layers and activation functions. And the axon sending the final message, that's the output layer. But here's the really crucial difference. Our brains learn and adapt through life experience, while these artificial networks learn by tweaking all those mathematical weights during a process we call training. So a single neuron, whether it's in your brain or on a computer chip, can't do a whole lot by itself. The real magic, the actual intelligence, well, that happens when you connect millions or even billions of them together into this huge layered network. So a standard network usually has this simple but really powerful three-part structure. You've got the input layer. Think of it as the front door. It's where raw data, like all the pixels from a photograph, first comes in. Then come the hidden layers. This is where the real thinking happens, the brain of the operation. The neurons in these layers work to find patterns and features, and you can have a whole bunch of these layers, which lets the network spot more and more complex patterns. And finally, the output layer gives us the answer we're looking for, like saying, yep, that's a cat. But wait, how does a network go from making totally random guesses to being incredibly accurate? This is the most brilliant part of the whole thing. It literally learns from its own mistakes. Let's break down how that actually works. The learning process is basically a four-step loop that just keeps going. Step 1, the network makes a guess. This is called forward propagation. Step 2, it figures out how wrong it was by comparing its guess to the right answer. This wrongness score is called the loss. Step 3, and this is the absolute key, the network sends that error message backward through all the layers. That's backpropagation. As it goes back, it adjusts all the weights on the connections just a little bit to try and do better next time. And step 4, repeat. It does this over and over and over, sometimes millions of times, getting a tiny bit smarter with every single guess. Okay, so now we know how they're built and how they learn. So where are these things actually showing up in the real world? The truth is, you're probably using them every single day and you don't even know it. Image recognition is the classic example. You know when you upload a photo to social media and it automatically suggests who to tag? That's a neural network. The first layers in the network learn to see really simple stuff like lines, edges, and colors. The next layers combine those to recognize more complex shapes, like an eye or a nose. And the final layers put it all together to identify a specific face. This exact same technology is now being used to analyze medical scans, helping doctors catch diseases way earlier than was ever possible before. Then there's this huge field called natural language processing. Anytime you ask your phone for the weather or use an app that translates conversations in real time, that's a neural network that understands human language. The network learns how words relate to one another, tweaking its weights to understand context, grammar, and even emotion. It's the magic behind those customer service chatbots and what's making our search engines so much smarter. And of course, you can't talk about this stuff without mentioning self-driving cars. Autonomous vehicles use neural networks to process this insane amount of data from cameras and sensors all in real time. The network has to learn to identify everything: pedestrians, stop signs, other cars, lane markings, and then make split-second decisions to get you down the road safely. It's easily one of the most complicated and high-stakes uses for this technology. But it's not all perfect. There's a major trade-off here. On the one hand, neural networks are ridiculously powerful. They can find these subtle, complex patterns in massive amounts of data that no human ever could. But on the other hand, they have some big drawbacks. They're often a black box, which means that even the people who built them can't always explain why it made a certain decision. And they are super hungry. They need a ton of data and a ton of computing power just to get trained. And that brings us to a final, and I think really important thought. These networks aren't just math. They're basically mirrors. We train them on data that we created, our words, our pictures, our decisions. And so the very act of building an artificial brain forces us to ask a really deep question. As these machines learn from our world, what parts of ourselves, both the good and the bad, are we teaching them to amplify and reflect back at us? Thanks for tuning in.